Why do some women walk into a room and instantly shift its energy? Why do they attract respect, attention, and admiration without saying a word? It's not about beauty, status, or even achievement. It's about presence, it's about energy, it's about what I call the magnetic woman. A queen does not become magnetic by demanding attention. She becomes magnetic because she doesn't need it. A magnetic woman doesn't ask, "Do they like me?" She asks, "Do I respect myself right now?" She's not driven by validation. She's driven by values. She's not ruled by her emotions. She commands her emotions. She doesn't chase relationships. She attracts connections that mirror her strength. Just like great leaders don't inspire through authority, but through authenticity, a queen isn't magnetic because she carries a crown. She's magnetic because she carries character. Let me ask you something. Are your decisions driven by fear and scarcity or purpose and clarity? Because powerful women are not fearless. They simply choose to act from courage more often than from fear. A magnetic woman knows the difference between being wanted and being valued, between being admired and being respected, between being busy and being fulfilled. She doesn't compete. She creates. She doesn't strive to be better than others. She works to be better than she was yesterday. Here's the truth. Becoming magnetic doesn't start with how the world sees you. It starts with how you see yourself. Queens do not search for the throne. They become the throne. They don't pursue impact. They embody it. They nurture their mind, protect their peace, honor their boundaries. They do not apologize for their vision. They do not shrink in spaces that require them to rise. So let me challenge every woman listening today, stop asking, "Who will choose me?" Start asking, "Who am I becoming?" Stop waiting to be recognized. Start becoming someone who cannot be ignored. Because the moment you understand that your worth is not determined by reaction, but by your foundation, that's when you become magnetic. Not because you shine brighter, but because others recognize their own shadow in your light. You want to know how queens become magnetic? They choose peace over approval, purpose over popularity, growth over comfort, and self-respect over everything. And then, without trying, without chasing, without forcing, they become what every powerful leader is. A beacon, a standard, a woman who doesn't attract the world, but attracts the right world around her. You don't become magnetic by changing who you are. You become magnetic by remembering who you are. A queen doesn't wait to be crowned. She decides she is one. And from that moment on, the world adjusts. Some people walk into a room and immediately draw attention, not because they speak the loudest or move the most, but because they carry themselves with a sense of certainty. It's a calm certainty, not arrogance, not superiority, but quiet confidence. They don't demand to be seen. But you see them anyway. That is the foundation of a magnetic presence. A magnetic woman doesn't chase approval because deep down she understands something most people don't. The moment you start chasing attention is the moment you signal that you don't believe you deserve it. Attention is not something you pursue. It is something you earn by embodying who you truly are. Approval becomes irrelevant when your actions align with your identity. When we are uncertain of ourselves, we focus outward. Do they like me? Do they think I'm enough? Did I impress them? But when we are clear on who we are, our attention shifts inward. Am I living my values? Am I respecting my boundaries? Am I proud of how I showed up today? That inner shift is what makes someone magnetic. Because people are drawn not to perfection, but to clarity. Presence is not about being physically there. Presence is about being emotionally and mentally aligned with what you stand for. Have you ever spoken to someone who's responsive, polite even, but you can tell they're not fully with you? Contrast that with someone who listens with intention not to reply, but to understand. Their eyes lock in, their body is still, and in that moment you feel like what you're saying truly matters. That's presence, and that kind of presence is rare. That's why it's magnetic. There's a paradox about magnetic energy. It originates from a place of detachment. The woman who walks with real confidence is not concerned with how others perceive her. She's aware, but not affected. She knows opinions are reflections, not definitions. She shows up fully, not to be accepted, but because she has accepted herself first. Powerful presence is born from self-respect. You can have outer beauty, external success, even influence, but without internal alignment, none of those translate into magnetism. People feel energy before they process words or observe details. They might not be able to explain why they are drawn to a magnetic woman, but they feel something grounded and authentic about her. It's because she acts from a foundation of worth, not from a hunger for validation. The irony is, when she stops seeking attention, attention finds her. When she stops worrying about being liked, she becomes inherently likable. When she stops trying to be seen, she becomes unforgettable. People are not drawn to those who need them, they are drawn to those who don't. Not because independence is attractive, but because emotional security creates psychological safety. When a woman is confident in her identity, she gives others permission to feel secure in her presence. She doesn't compete, perform, or adjust herself to please the room. She stands as she is, and in doing so, she inspires others to do the same. We admire people who live in alignment. We admire people who don't compromise their values to fit expectations. We admire people who show up consistently, regardless of who's watching. That admiration is the essence of magnetism. Presence, then, is not an external act, it's an internal state. It is cultivated in silence, in private moments of decision, making, in the reaffirmation of one's worth regardless of outcomes. Presence is when your behavior matches your beliefs, when what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do are fully aligned. That emotional congruence naturally radiates, and that is what people respond to. So the question is not, how do I make people notice me? The real question is, how deeply do I notice myself? When you walk into a room with the certainty that you belong because you've chosen to be there, not because someone has granted you permission, you become magnetic. When you no longer perform for approval, but act from intention, you become unforgettable. When you stop trying to be seen and instead focus on being real, you draw others to you without effort. The moment you embody your truth fully is the moment people cannot help but feel it. That is how presence becomes power. That is how presence becomes magnetism. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who makes decisions based on principles instead of pressure. It's rare because most people live in a constant state of reaction, reacting to opinions, reacting to expectations, reacting to trends. But the magnetic woman doesn't react. She chooses, and what she chooses is guided by values, not by the shifting winds of approval. Approval is temporary, values are enduring. When we chase approval, the standard keeps moving. What is applauded today may be criticized tomorrow. One moment you're appreciated, the next you're doubted. But when you live by values, your compass doesn't change based on who's watching or who's commenting. You remain steady, grounded, and consistent. And consistency, when rooted in truth, becomes magnetic. Many people spend their lives trying to be liked. They change how they speak depending on the group, adjust their behavior based on who they're trying to impress, even compromise their beliefs to ensure acceptance. The problem is, every time we do this, we trade authenticity for acceptance. And what we fail to realize is that acceptance built on a version of ourselves that isn't real is never truly ours. It belongs to the act, not to the individual. Living by values is not about being rigid. It's about being intentional. When a woman knows what she stands for, she becomes unshakable. She no longer asks, will they approve of me if I do this? Instead, she asks, does this align with who I am? This is the shift from seeking to serving, from pleasing to leading. Because true leadership begins the moment you decide that being respected matters more than being liked. It's easy to alter yourself to gain admiration. It's harder to remain yourself and risk disapproval. But that is exactly what makes it powerful. When someone watches you hold your position even under pressure, they may not always agree with you, but they will respect you. Respect lasts longer than praise. Respect invites trust, and trust is the foundation of influence. Think about the leaders who changed history. They were not the most agreeable. They were the most aligned. They didn't gain respect by keeping everyone comfortable, but by standing firm in their convictions even when it wasn't popular. They did not ask, "Does the world approve?" They asked, "Is this the right thing to do?" Magnetic women operate the same way. Their clarity gives them presence. Their integrity gives them impact. And here's the remarkable part: people can feel it. Even without saying a word, someone who is aligned with their values carries quiet conviction. Their decisions make sense even before they explain them. Their actions reinforce their message. That coherence creates emotional resonance. That resonance pulls people in. Approval-driven behavior creates inconsistency, and inconsistency creates confusion. When people aren't sure who you truly are, they'll hesitate to trust you. But someone who acts from their values is predictable in the best way. Others know what to expect from them. They trust their word, their direction, their energy. That sense of reliability becomes magnetic. Now, does choosing values over approval come without cost? No. Sometimes it means losing connections. Sometimes it means being misunderstood. But temporary disconnection is far less damaging than long-term self-betrayal. Because living without alignment is exhausting, trying to maintain an image drains energy, living by values replenishes it. Approval has to be sustained. Integrity sustains you. There will always be moments when approval feels tempting. When silence feels easier than speaking your truth. When nodding along feels safer than holding your ground. In those moments, ask yourself, would I still make this choice if no one was watching? If the answer is yes, you're acting from values. If the answer is no, you're acting for validation. When you live by values consistently, something shifts. You stop trying to fit in because you realize you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out by standing firm. Approval-driven people may get attention, but values-driven people gain admiration. Attention is given. Admiration is earned. The magnetic woman doesn't attract because she bends herself for acceptance. She attracts because she chooses alignment over adaptation. She embodies her truth unapologetically, and in doing so, she gives everyone around her permission to do the same. That is what makes her powerful. Not that people approve of her, but that she no longer needs them to. Courage is often misunderstood. People believe it means being fearless, as if those who stand tall cannot feel the tremors the rest of us do. But true courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it. Every magnetic woman feels fear, just like everyone else. The difference is, she doesn't let fear be the loudest voice in the room. She doesn't allow scarcity to dictate her actions. Instead, she chooses purpose, she chooses clarity, and she chooses them over and over again. Fear whispers, "What if it goes wrong?" Purpose responds, "What if it matters?" Fear says, "Stay small, don't risk it." Clarity reminds us, "You weren't meant to remain where you are." The person led by fear lives in a cycle of protection. The person led by purpose lives in a rhythm of expansion, and expansion is magnetic. We think successful people are confident all the time. They're not, they simply have a reason bigger than their insecurity. Watch someone deeply committed to what they believe in, and you'll notice something interesting. Their fear doesn't disappear, but it becomes irrelevant in comparison to the mission they stand for. Their actions are not driven by the need to feel safe. They are driven by the need to live authentically. There are two ways to live: to avoid loss or to pursue meaning. Those who avoid loss end up living smaller than their potential. Those who pursue meaning accept that discomfort is part of progress. A magnetic woman is not the one who never hesitates. She is the one who refuses to let hesitation make her decisions. She listens to her fear, but she does not obey it. Fear and purpose both knock at our door. One says, "Stay where you are." The other says, "Become who you could be." And what defines us, what determines our impact, is which one we invite in. Sometimes the smallest step in the direction of purpose carries more strength than the biggest leap driven by fear. People are drawn to those who are emotionally expanding. They are drawn to those who keep growing, who keep learning, who keep showing up even when it's uncomfortable. It's not their perfection that inspires us, it's their persistence. It's not their unshakable certainty that moves us, it's their ability to navigate uncertainty with grace. A magnetic woman doesn't deny her fear. She acknowledges it, she studies it, and then she asks herself, does this fear protect me or does it limit me? And if it's the latter, she chooses differently. This level of self-awareness is powerful. It allows her to move intentionally rather than impulsively. There's a difference between caution and limitation. Caution is wisdom, limitation is surrender. She practices caution, but she refuses to surrender. She measures risk, but she doesn't become controlled by it. She understands that every choice will cost her something. Acting from fear costs her possibility. Acting from purpose costs her comfort. One cost is temporary, the other is lifelong. When we witness someone acting from purpose, despite their fear, we are drawn in. Not because we necessarily agree with them, but because we recognize something we desire in ourselves, freedom. Freedom to choose, to grow, to become. Their courage becomes an invitation. Their clarity becomes a mirror. Their resilience becomes a catalyst. Strong people don't always feel strong. They simply keep moving forward. They don't wait to eliminate doubt. They learn to walk with it. They don't wait to find confidence. They build it through action. They don't try to escape fear. They transform it into fuel. Think of the people who have inspired you most. Did they live perfect lives without insecurity? Or did they rise in the moments where it would have been easier to retreat? That's where magnetism begins, in the willingness to rise. The magnetic woman knows that purpose won't always feel safe, but she also knows that safety never built anything worth remembering, so she chooses clarity. She chooses courage. Not once, but repeatedly. It's not that she does not feel fear. It's that she refuses to shrink because of it. She doesn't wait until she is ready. She moves when it matters, and that is what makes her magnetic. Not that she feels no fear, but that her purpose is stronger than her doubt. There's a subtle yet powerful shift that happens when a woman stops seeking to be wanted and instead begins to value herself. Being wanted is often rooted in how others perceive us. It's conditional. It requires constant performance, constant affirmation. To be wanted, people often modify their personality, adjust their energy, mold themselves to fit what they think others desire. It's an exhausting pursuit because the standard of desirable is ever changing. One day you're enough, the next day you're too much. You win approval, but you lose authenticity. But being valued is different. Being valued is tied not to what you provide in the moment, but to who you are at your core. It comes from showing up in your truth and staying there, even when it's uncomfortable. It's born out of integrity, self-respect, and clarity in your boundaries. When a woman values herself, she doesn't perform for admiration, she stands in alignment, and allows admiration to be the natural byproduct of her presence. To be wanted is external, to be valued is internal. Most people go through life choosing what brings immediate approval, even if it costs long-term respect. They pick being liked over being heard, being seen over being known. They accept temporary attention at the expense of enduring impact. But the magnetic woman doesn't operate like this. She understands that her energy, her time, her peace, these are not to be traded for brief validation. She knows that being constantly available or agreeable might attract people, but it will not attract the right people. She knows that attraction built on self-neglect is a transaction, not a connection. There's a moment that many experience but few recognize, the moment when you realize you are being valued for what you offer, not who you are. And that moment changes everything. It forces you to ask, am I being appreciated, or am I being utilized? Am I recognized for my essence, or merely acknowledged for my utility? When the magnetic woman senses this, she doesn't fight for more appreciation. She adjusts her boundaries. She steps back when her worth is misinterpreted as convenience. She chooses depth over demand. To be admired is good. To be respected is better. To be understood is rare. To be valued is transformational. People often chase admiration, thinking it's the highest form of acceptance. But admiration can be shallow. It can exist without connection. Respect, however, is rooted in recognition of character, and character is built on decisions that reflect self-worth. The magnetic woman doesn't take pride in how many people want her attention. She takes pride in how she uses her attention. She's intentional with her energy. She invests it where it fosters growth, not depletion. She understands that saying no is not rejection, it's protection. She understands that the right connections will not be intimidated by her boundaries, they will be drawn to them. We often think that doing more makes us more valuable, that giving endlessly increases our worth. But true value doesn't come from how much we give. It comes from how deeply we honor what we give from. A woman who values herself takes care of the source. She recharges before she pours. She nurtures her mind, her space, her voice, not because she is selfish, but because she understands that unprotected power eventually becomes diluted. The difference between being wanted and being valued can be seen in how people treat you when you stop performing. If attention fades, it was based on performance. If respect remains, it was based on authenticity. A magnetic woman is not magnetic because she stretches herself thin for others. She is magnetic because she stays whole for herself. Her fullness, not her availability, is what draws people in. Her boundaries, not her compliance, build trust. Her clarity, not her adaptability, creates connection. People are drawn to those who are deeply comfortable with themselves. They sense stability. They feel presence. They recognize someone who doesn't need them to confirm their worth. Instead, someone who has already claimed it. So the question is not, how do I make people want me? The real question is, am I living in a way that shows I value me? Because when you begin to honor your energy, when you only engage from fullness and not desperation, when you demonstrate that your peace is not for negotiation, that's when something shifts. You stop being a person others seek to possess, and you become someone they learn to respect. That is the art of valuing yourself. And that is what makes you magnetic. There's a quiet power in the decision to evolve instead of compete. Most people measure their progress by looking sideways, comparing themselves to those around them. They adjust their focus based on what others are doing, constantly scanning the room to see where they stand. But comparison is the enemy of growth. When we compete with others, our vision narrows. When we compete with ourselves, when the only question is whether we're moving forward from where we were yesterday, our vision expands. A magnetic woman does not seek to outperform others. She seeks to outgrow herself. She understands that true progress isn't about external rankings or public recognition. It's about internal refinement. She doesn't ask, am I better than them? She asks, am I better than I was before? And that simple pivot changes everything. Competition is fueled by insecurity. Evolution is fueled by purpose. When your growth is tied to comparison, you'll always feel unstable, either above someone and falsely confident, or below someone and quietly discouraged. But when your growth is tied to personal development, your foundation becomes unshakable. You know that you're not racing anyone. You're building yourself. People who constantly compete often seek significance, but those who commit to evolving create impact. Significance is about being seen. Impact is about influencing change, even if you remain unseen. The magnetic woman understands that sometimes the greatest transformation happens when no one is watching. She does not need applause to affirm her progress. She measures success through alignment, not attention. Imagine two people climbing a mountain. One keeps looking sideways, comparing their pace to others. They're distracted, anxious, occasionally rushing or slowing, depending on what someone beside them is doing. The other keeps their eyes on the summit, taking consistent steps with clarity and intention. The first may move faster for moments, but the second moves further over time. Evolution is not about speed, it's about sustainability. There's a misconception that evolving quietly means you lack ambition. In truth, it means you have deeper ambition. You're not trying to win today, you're working to become unrecognizable 5 years from now. That kind of vision requires patience, discipline, and humility. A competitive mind seeks validation quickly. A growth-oriented mind understands that what is built slowly is built securely. We admire people who evolve, not because they talk about being better than others, but because they demonstrate being better than themselves. It's humbling to watch someone who used to be easily shaken now stand firm. It's inspiring to see someone who once doubted themselves now act with quiet confidence. That transformation makes us wonder what we might become if we stopped competing and started growing. The woman who evolves doesn't view others as threats. She sees them as reflections, indicators of what's possible. She doesn't get intimidated by others' success. She studies it. She doesn't resent those who are ahead. She learns from them. She understands that inspiration is fuel, not rivalry, and when you approach others this way, your presence becomes calm, strong, and magnetic. Evolution also protects her from burnout. Competing demands constant proving. Evolving requires consistent becoming. One drains energy, the other expands it. When your mission is self-improvement, you don't need to sprint. You just need to remain committed to the small decisions that elevate you daily. Over time, those decisions create separation, not from others, but from who you used to be. People are drawn to someone who isn't in a rush to prove themselves. They sense assurance, they feel grounded. They learn that power doesn't come from being louder. It comes from being aligned. When you're evolving, you don't flaunt your progress, you embody it. And the embodiment of progress is far more magnetic than the display of superiority. Shifting from competition to evolution is choosing peace over pressure. It's understanding that the goal is not to conquer others, it's to master yourself. It's realizing that growth is not an event, it's a lifestyle. A magnetic woman wakes up each day asking, "What choice today will make me stronger tomorrow?" And then she makes that choice even if no one sees it. Because she knows something most don't. The moment she competes, she limits her potential to someone else's. But when she evolves, she opens the door to who she can truly become. That is how she rises quietly, consistently, unstoppably. And that is what makes her magnetic. There is a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that peace is more powerful than approval, purpose is more compelling than popularity, and self-respect is more sustainable than any external validation. That moment often arrives quietly, not with fanfare or dramatic change, but with a calm resolve that says, "I will no longer sacrifice who I am just to be accepted." It's a deeply personal awakening, and it's often the turning point between living reactively and leading from within. Approval is seductive because it gives us instant gratification. Purpose, however, gives us lasting fulfillment. When we chase approval, we base our worth on how we are perceived, but when we commit to purpose, our worth comes from who we are becoming. And that difference is what makes a woman magnetic, not just admired, but deeply respected. Peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict, it comes from no longer engaging in battles that compromise our dignity. A magnetic woman realizes that not every disagreement requires her involvement, not every reaction needs her energy. She learns to distinguish between situations that challenge her and those that drain her. One fuels growth, the other causes erosion. She knows the difference. There is power in selective silence, not silence out of fear, but silence born from clarity. She stops defending herself unnecessarily, because she understands that explanation is often demanded by those who have already chosen not to understand. Instead of fighting to be right, she focuses on being aligned, and alignment brings peace. Purpose, on the other hand, is often uncomfortable. It stretches us, it asks us to step outside what is familiar and engage with what is meaningful. Comfort keeps us the same. Purpose evolves us. The magnetic woman embraces discomfort when she knows it leads to becoming a truer version of herself. She does not choose easy, she chooses meaningful, and that choice, made repeatedly, is where her quiet influence originates. Popularity is fleeting, it shifts with mood, trend, and circumstance, but purpose is steady. It anchors us when everything around us feels uncertain. People may not always understand a purpose-driven person immediately, but they eventually admire her. Because, while others bend to fit in, she stands to stand out, not out of ego, but out of conviction. Self-respect is the foundation of magnetism. It is not loud, it is not aggressive, it is not about proving anything. It is a quiet standard that governs action. It says, this is the energy I accept, this is how I choose to show up, this is where I draw the line. And the remarkable thing is, when a woman honors her boundaries consistently, others begin to honor them too. Many fear that setting boundaries will push people away. In reality, it eliminates the ones who are only comfortable with your self-abandonment. What remains are relationships that uplift, conversations that add clarity, and environments where authenticity is safe. A magnetic woman doesn't strive to be liked by everyone. She strives to be at peace with herself. Others feel that peace and are drawn to it. The world often teaches women to be pleasing, agreeable, endlessly accommodating. But there is a quiet revolution happening within those who realize that fulfillment comes not from being everything to everyone, but from being exactly who they are meant to be. When she chooses self-respect, she no longer asks, do they approve? She asks, does this honor me? And that shift changes the course of her life. Those who move with purpose protect their peace and honor their self-respect, don't exert energy to attract. They embody the energy that draws the right people in. They create environments where dignity is not negotiable, where aspiration is celebrated, where emotional safety is non-negotiable. Their influence is not forceful, it is gravitational. It's easy to be popular for who others want you to be. It's far more meaningful to be valued for who you truly are. The magnetic woman understands this. She is not perfect. She is not always fearless, but she is aligned, she is grounded, and she is committed to living a life that reflects what matters most to her. She knows that peace without authenticity is false, that purpose without integrity is hollow, that self-respect without consistency is incomplete. So she builds her life around what strengthens her internally, not what pleases others externally, and when she walks into a room, she doesn't try to impress anyone. She doesn't seek to be the loudest presence. She simply carries herself with the calm assurance of someone who has chosen her soul over her image. And that, without effort or performance, makes her magnetic.